be with you for personal and very warm introduction. Before I begin, this morning when I got up and I looked at the home from the Darbarsa, and that's one of the lines in there was just loosely interpreted that the divine force has put goat or sheep, if you may, and tiger or lion in the same space on this earth. And the question was being asked was, if they both are supposed to be in the same space on this earth, why are you so afraid of him? Why do you have so many doubts about what the interaction needs to be? And that got me thinking. It did use the word bakri to sing, So if they are both in the same space, it really is about we are all in different spaces with different mindsets and different ideologies, if you may, or different lifestyles. And then there are psychological traits assigned to all of us, somewhere between character disorder and maybe whatever else psychologists might use, neurosis, I suppose. Then how are we supposed to be interacting? And why do we have so many doubts? And how do I get rid of the fear of this interaction, essentially? And I thought, this gave me an idea. I have a prepared presentation, but a sort of a springboard to talk about Vaisakhi is something of that nature. That interaction is not taking place or wasn't taking place between, you can say in today's language, people were living in their own silos. And when you are in your own silo of your own kind, your own tribe, culture, religion, backgrounds, whatever you might want to call it, you're not going to have a meaningful dialogue or interaction. So Vaisakhi has something to do with these kind of things. And today's agenda, before I begin, and let me actually put it in today's context first of all. This is Puran Singh's quote. You can read it if you're able to from there. But in the world, everyone's talking about democracy now. And democracy is an idea. Democracy not necessarily how you might elect or select or vote for your prime minister if the elections are called early, or how England is about to do and they're wondering what SNP has already done in the next 2 weeks and who will be the next prime minister, or what India has just gone through with Modi visiting here. Democracy is more than political process of selecting the individual who's head of the state. Puran Singh is talking about democracy as an idea, as if you look at dictionary, is essentially about representation. And then every country and every system has their own way of figuring out the representation. When Europe was talking about this idea of how do you create collective representation, a meaningful representation, how do you take not just the votes of democracy, but the feelings of democracy? This experiment hadn't taken place in South Asia. When Europe was thinking about it, Greeks were articulating it, but even Europe hadn't experimented with it yet. At the same time, around 1699, there's a trading happening for almost 240 years, and 1699, another way to look at Vaisakhi, another way to look at it is that this was really about how do you capture the best feelings available in individuals and make them the representatives of the people. To borrow something from Saidian terms, Edward Said used to say, he has actually a book, and it's called Who Really is the Representative of the People? Right? Because representatives can be assigned, representatives can be bought out, we call it lobbying these days. Representatives could be installed, and we call them dictators, for example, dictators. There are all sorts of things available, but what happens in Vaisakhi or in the Sikh context, that our experimentation in South Asia took place, where you were dealing with ISIS-like forces, today's ISIS, and you were dealing with essentially religious domain dominating the political domain, and they were installing things. And here comes a Vaisakhi, which gives a new idea is born, new child is born, which essentially means that the human feelings were captured to figure out how do you create new representatives of the people. I don't think we have thought about it in that way, and that's one of the ways I'll be discussing today. So agenda today really is to talk about Vaisakhi from a cultural angle, because it is cultural. If you look at in last 10 days, and I'm sure for next week, even within Canada, every politician is invoking Vaisakhi, right? I saw an email yesterday from your Diversity and Multicultural Minister, Jason Kenney, sending out a mass email on how this is a harvesting festival, and everyone's invoking that. So that's part of Vaisakhi. But is it just that? Is it only about harvesting festival, or is there something else going on? What was the cultural balloon, so the background of Vaisakhi? How are the cultures in South Asia celebrating this? Then we'll get into a little bit about Gurbani. What does Guru Granth Sahib have to say about the word Vaisakhi? Because I think that's getting lost in, perhaps even in our Nagar Kirtans too, including in our Gurdwaras, because maybe we have reduced it to just doing a parade, or just having a nice langar, or just showing solidarity or strength in particular cities where we do Nagar Kirtans. So what is the Gurbani's context even before 1699 occurred? Because there is a preparation. Guru Nanak started the whole system, and he is preparing. He writes about it. He says, what will make Vaisakhi wonderful? And I'll get into that a bit. And then there is a culmination of these ideas on the day of Vaisakhi. Then follows a great tradition of the blueprint which was revealed on Vaisakhi Day. And what is that blueprint? And what's the relevance of that archetype or blueprint in 2015, as Ritu had mentioned in her introduction? So basically taking us through a journey of Vaisakhi, how gurus took an existing festival, a great celebration, a party, if you may, and then made that party something like which can be a perpetual celebration, which means we all have a role to play in this representation. Okay, so what is Vaisakhi culturally speaking? Well, I'm sure all of you realize, and you already know this, that there is some confusion of this, that this is a new year in Punjab. Well, that is true. It is a Punjabi New Year. It's not just a Punjabi New Year, even Tamilians have a new year at this time. If you look at Vaisakh in the larger South Asian context, both culturally and religiously, this is the time when Siddhartha became Buddha. That happened on Vaisakhi Day as well. So Vaisakhi is we cannot separate the culture from it, or the other religious traditions from it. This already is a time, it's a society at the time is agrarian society, which means mostly it's a farming economy, and there are two harvests which happen, one during this time, one during the Western Thanksgiving time. And this was one way for, like when you get a bonus, if you get a 30% bonus in a particular year, I'm sure you're going shopping. I'm sure you're going to, if you have kids, taking them to Disney World or some vacation, right? Think of it like that. You had a great harvesting festival, again, economically speaking. You just had a great harvesting. So now you're going to go to Mela. Mela was the idea that where there was a market, you are buying things, you're eating things, you're having fun. This is what culturally Vaisakhi was. There are songs about that. Taniram Chal, one of my favorite Vaisakhi Punjabi song is Taniram Chatre Groted, Marda the Mame Jak Mele Aa Gaya, which means Mele te jaake, in Punjabi they say, you laddu bhi khane ne, to kapde bhi lene ne, things of that nature. And people have different ways to celebrate. The way you celebrate something is going to be different than how you celebrate. But the idea was, we are thankful to the divine, we had a great harvest, now let's buy some clothes and get some, have party, basically, that idea. You go on a shopping spree as well, depending on your needs. That was Vaisakhi. The Mela was, we didn't have, Amazon.com sending you through the new systems of, shipping methods, sending you things at your home, or Bloomingdale's, or whatever else you have. So then Mela was a place where everything was brought together. So there was music, there was dance, there was shopping, there were restaurants, you didn't have, all that was happening at the Mela. This was where market was brought to you, celebration was brought. Families went there, tribes went there, some people did their religious celebration, some people did their cultural celebration. That was Vaisakhi in Punjab, which is very exciting. So what I'm trying to say is this already has a huge psychological imprint in people's mind. There's Buddhist idea going on, there's a Tamil idea going on, there are Assamese are celebrating their new year, Punjabis are celebrating their new year, some are based on solar calendar, some are based on lunar. So if you get confused today about how Sikh calendar issues are coming up, Sikh calendar actually starts in March, but one of the reasons for confusion is state issues. The other is it actually is a Punjabi New Year. So Vaisakhi is thankfulness, Vaisakhi is celebration, culturally speaking. In this context, there are two paradigms in existence. So I want to use this as a springboard again. So the existing folk culture is about listed there. People are, it's like if you had a great year, at the end of the year, you know, you do your tax returns, this is that season going on, all the accountants can tell you, they're so busy, that's why. And if you had a great year, you basically are pretty enthusiastic, right? So if you had a great harvest, you are enthusiastic. So April 15th is tax day in America these days. Think of Vaisakhi was like a tax day. You basically figured out how much money you got. So you have enthusiasm if you had a good year. If you had enthusiasm, you're even probably, and you talk about how we're going to do next year. There's a lot of ambition coming out of it. But one of the things was, all these celebrations were very, very exclusive. There was no intermixing. For example, quote-unquote, so-called lower caste, or somebody of other religion, there was no intermixing. You had your own spots. And those spots had to do with social strata. Those spots had to do with your religious persuasion or level of observation, or they had to do with your alliance with particular state or authorities. Now, look at Vaisakhi in this way. Guru Nanak comes on the scene, he's looking at this whole thing, and that 239-year journey is providing a new paradigm to exist. What is the new paradigm? How do you take all these powerful and emotional folk elements and make them divine elements? Now, I'm using the word divine. Guru Nanak uses ik onkar. So his thing is all about ik. Ik is one. How do I take this great expanse where people are having fun, but how do I make them go towards one goal? Feel that they are one instead of still being exclusivist. So enthusiasm is being changed into make them even more inspirational. Why? Because this is a place where even when Vaisakhi is going on, South Asian history is, Middle Eastern invaders are coming. The inspiration is not there to even resist them and fight them and not get enslaved. Sort of like today's ISIS, and I'll get into that a little later. Same thing is ambition. There's a lot of ambition that I need to have more, sort of like our today's corporate slavery culture, if I may call it that. Like, I'm okay with if I get my next 10%, 20%. If you get more than that, you're happy. But very few people are talking about, like, I think it's only last week that Salesforce announced. This is the first corporation to do that. And that's why I'm making an example out of it, to make it relevant. There is, for example, the salaries of women to men, you know that, it's just not, equity is not there. Salesforce announced yesterday, I think last week, sorry, that they are going to make equal pays regardless of the gender. So they have made it a policy now. This would be like they're inspired to change. The world is talking about it, just like ambition, every Sikh world also talks about a lot of things. Back then, South Asian world is talking about a lot of things. Guru Nanak Sahib now want to change and transform ambitions to inspirations to do larger things. So instead of just ambition, you have a more purpose. So the purpose is, how do you regroup communities? How do you create these social justice movements? How do you fight the invader forces? And exclusivism is completely destroyed, and we were made an inclusive society, which means you have no right to tell anyone to not even invite them to join this caravan. Guru Nanak, through Guru Gobind Singh, not a single event, and I'll get into the Vaisakhi a little later, but just a larger thesis. Every invitation is open with zero criterions. Anyone who wants to join in towards a particular purpose in this culture of the divine, which Guru Nanak eventually called it the culture of Naam. That this culture of Naam is this identification of the divine, is where we take our ambitions to new inspirations, we take our enthusiasms to bigger purposes in life, and we're going to do it inclusively. So let's talk about what is this new paradigm. So here are just only 2 citations on Vaisakhi from Guru Granth Sahib. Now all I'm going to do is just focus your attention on what Guru Nanak says about what is Vaisakhi. So the original intent, we'll call it. And he just simply, just look at this line. Vaisakhi prab pave surut sabat man vana. Simply put, he's saying, really Vaisakhi becomes great for you if your mind is ready to become full of awareness. So already a celebration is being taken to new height. He's like, it's great. It's like, think about if you were married the day you were getting married, or you think about the day you're getting in a great relationship. You have so much enthusiasm. You can do anything that day. So he's saying, now, community is very enthusiastic. But how about taking this enthusiasm to actually making it, today we will calling it every occasion is a teaching moment. So what are we learning from Vaisakhi? And Guru Nanak's idea, his idea of Vaisakhi, very explicitly, that in this month, during this season, during this time, at this opportunity of when you are feeling great, is Shabad, which is wisdom, is it entering your mind to make you full of awareness? Surat is awareness. So if that is happening, he's like, you'll know what divine is. Prabhu is divine. He's like, the divine is with you. Divine is entering your life if you have opened up your minds and you are becoming thoughtful. You're becoming, what we'll say, you're having your own journey of being very inquisitive to becoming thoughtfulness in life. Now, Guru Arjan, which is fifth Guru, and I want to mention his thing, he said, Vaisakh suhavan ta lagya ja sant peta hai soy. So here is a training. So first generation, first founder Guru is giving the idea. He says, really, it's all about opening up the minds. Simply put, it's all about opening up the minds. Because celebration wasn't enough, you are still being enslaved by the religious and political leaders of the time. And fifth Guru says, now if you really want the training to get rid of this slavery of any kind, spiritual, political, economical, Vaisakh Sohava. Sohava is beautiful. You know, there is, and though we have those serendipitous moments in our lives where we feel the beauty around us, the serenity around us. He says, those people will feel this beauty. Vaisakh Sohava ta, it's conditional. Then, when happens what? Sant peta vasoy. When you really are willing to, and again, interpretations are there. Sant, I just want to mention the way linguistically it's written. It's a singular word, which generally implies it refers to the Guru. Guru in Sikhi is wisdom. It says, when you submit to the wisdom, which means when you are ready to be mentored by wisdom, you will feel Vaisakhi is awesome. Otherwise, for us, it's a yearly ritual, right? Just like back then, it was a yearly ritual. It's basically a great payday. And great payday lasts depending on your spending habits, maybe a day to a week, maybe to a month. Similarly, is Vaisakhi for us. It lasts a day to a week to a month. Otherwise, it's gone. Sikh Heritage Month is done and we are gone. That kind of idea. It's great that we have it. But how do you take the next level? He says, you'll be able to take it to the next level if you are ready to be mentored by wisdom, thoughtfulness. So it's the next thing. First is saying, become thoughtful. Now it's saying, you have to seriously adopt a mentor who is going to make you thoughtful. So this is Vaisakhi in Guru Granth Sahib. 2 references to Vaisakhi, very explicit, very specific, that this is creating a new culture of basically incredible inquiry, and then not just inquiry, but serious training. Okay. So let's come to the word Khalsa before we describe, because Khalsa also comes in Guru Granth Sahib. It's a Persian-Arabic word. I'm sure you've heard it enough times. I've shown you 3 variations of it on the slide. It is a Persian-Arabic word. It comes from Khalis or Khalsa or Khalisa. Hey, if you are aware of Persian-Arabic language, then it's like, they call it a choti, it's a slight at the end. Now, the most common term you probably heard till now is it means pure. I just want you to reconsider it a bit, because the word pure is loaded with political and religious connotations. There are people who consider themselves to be pure races, and then their whole job is to exterminate the impure ones. Just think about that. Guru Granth Sahib, Guru Nanak, vehemently fights the idea of impurity. The word is sutak in Asakiva, for example. So really, in Guru Granth Sahib's vocabulary, it's more about becoming nirmal. Nirmal is, mal is mal is dirt. So nirmal will be when you are getting rid of your negativities. You're becoming excellent. So Khalsa is something of that nature, just something to consider etymologically even. Second thing, meaning you will find is, in the emperor systems, the land or army which belong directly to the emperor is called Khalisa. So for example, the way it works is that Emperor gets tax revenues from kings, kings get it from the local chiefs get it from the local villagers. So it's a whole revenue system, just like today. You have municipalities, provinces, state, and federal taxes, local taxes, things like that. That's how the empire system used to work. And wherever it exists, that's how it works even today. Here, Khalisa means the army or land, so you can call it assets, which belong directly to the emperor, and they are not the revenues coming through other systems. Now this makes a lot of sense. I'm going to integrate the two meanings because I like to integrate the ideas, because that's what happens in culture. It's not this or that, it's the people's understanding, the original intent, and how it gets practiced. If you look at both things, becoming excellent, reducing your own negativities, and then directly reporting to the divine, that gives you the foundations of being a Khalsa. So it's very political, it is spiritual, and it definitely has economical paradigm built into it. That what kind of taxations you support, what kind of by the way, everywhere in the world, it's all about how you collect money and how you distribute it. That's what the political ideologies are. It's about how you collect, who pays, and who gets to spend in which systems. So Khalsa comes in Gurbani. It comes once in Bhagat Kabir Ji's Shabad, and there is a whole lot of interpretation being done about, are you Guru Gobind Singh's Khalsa, are you Kabir's Khalsa? I step out of that. I like to go back to basics. Kabir himself, Bhagat Kabir Ji himself is telling what does he mean by Khalsa. And look, the qualification he says, those who are in loving devotion are Khalsa. So we know the etymological meaning, which I just covered, being nirmal, getting rid of your own negativities and reporting directly to the divine, that idea. Now when he's describing, instead of saying, I think it means this, first you have to see what the author intended or the contributor intended. He's qualifying it himself. He says, Kaho Kabir. Kabir submits. Kabir is proclaiming. Kabir is submitting and explaining. Jan Paye Khalse, those people become the Khalsa. Prem Pagat Jajandi, those who have loving devotion in their life. I love this. I think we are unnecessarily creating a ruckus by trying to distribute whose Khalsa you are. Khalsa is only one, just like a Kokar is only one. The question is, where are you and what is your understanding of it? Now let's come quickly to Vaisakhi of 1699. I'm not going to get into the tent story. You guys can Google it and fight over it, what happened inside the tent. It's just like 2 days ago, it was Israel's creation day, the day it was founded. Major dailies of the world had a Declaration of Independence printed, and then in Canadian papers it happened, in American papers it happened. A different lobbying group, different foundations funded it. If you want to know how Canada was founded, you will look at that. If you want to look at how America was founded, you will look at that. The reason I'm saying this is when somebody asks us about Vaisakhi in Sikh context, so we understand the cultural context of it, do you know what the declaration was that day? Because we are into semantics more. I think this person did it. If I ask you today, if I ask an average American, do you know who signed the Declaration of Independence of America or Israel or India or anywhere else it is, for example, in Canada? I'm sure that's something you can find in Wikipedia. But if you ask the idea, people say, yeah, I kind of know what happened that day. So Vaisakhi, we know the players, the Panj Pyare, the Guru Gobind Singh, Mata Sahib Kaur, we know the instruments, the khanda, the bata, the batase. If you're not used to it, don't worry about it. Those are all, we will say, if you're creating a great mosaic, these are the elements which will go in there. But the question is, what happened that day? And that's what I want to know. What was the doctrine which was released? So invitation, first of all, coming back to Vaisakhi being inclusive, all Guru Gobind Singh said, every manuscript which exists agrees with this phrase. And the Panjabi phrase is, Koi hai. Is there anyone who wants to volunteer? He does not say how long you've been sick, how many generations you've been sick, what you look like, what you eat, how you pray, which language you speak, what dresses you're using, which region you came from. None of that was entertained. So we really have some serious rethinking to do here. He's saying, Koi hai. Is there anyone who wants to volunteer for this new paradigm? Utter volunteerism. Zero, not even implication, no implying even of any background, of any kind, religious, political, cultural, linguistic, economical, nothing is mentioned. Second thing is, it's not baptism. Baptism is a loaded connotation which has to do with, maybe we have some images of the Judeo-Christian heritage of baptism. It really is an initiation ceremony. Initiation is done with khande ki pahul. At the time it was called khande ki pahul. Khanda is a double-edged sword. We have totally forgotten even the paradigm behind a double-edged sword. This was the technical term which we have adopted, like Sikhs have adopted the word Amrit to explain this. Like we say Amrit Vela, Amrit Naam, Amrit Bani, Amrit ceremony. This actual ceremony is khande ki pahul. Initiation by the double-edged sword. I'm sure if you start saying that in English, even your picture in your mind will start changing. Because double-edged sword is already saying you got some interesting dichotomies to overpower. You have to transcend certain dualities. And inauguration, we say Khalsa was created, we say it was the birth of the Khalsa. All these vocabularies are pretty much have been introduced to us in post-1960s. That is not what Guru Gobind Singh says, that is not what our text says. Guru Gobind Singh never said, I created the Khalsa. He in fact says, Pragatyo Khalsa Pramatam Ki Launch. Pragatana is something which is revealed, something which was hidden, something which hasn't been concretized. He says, I bring to you, I reveal to you the Khalsa. Because remember, Kabir Sahib is also talking about it. Guru Nanak Sahib is talking about Vaisakhi. So it's something in the making. Just like there are declarations done, and after declaration there's a work, and eventually you see a product, right? So this is, in the psychological world, we call it, this is the art style. Or we might have, if you read Rumi, his ideal person is called Marde Khuda. If you read Nietzsche, his blueprint is, his ideal person is called the Superman. Not just the one in the comic books, but the idea. And he talks about what Superman is, how the one who surpasses the man in him, which means we got to go over animalistic tendencies. Similarly, other religious traditions and political theories and Tao, Shinto, Vaishnavite system, every religious sort of sentiment eventually goes into what is your ideal person. Khalsa is inauguration of that ideal person. And ideal is ideal, it doesn't mean you and me, this is a collective idea. And how do we collectively bring these kinds of people? Now let me show you how it got practiced from the concept to reality on 1699. This is a South Asian map. You know, possibly, I'm sure all of you know the names of the 5 individuals who volunteered, but on purpose I want you to look at where they're from and what they did. Only one of them is Panjabi, by the way. Just something to think about. So yes, we have a great relationship with Punjab. We have a special place because all our founding centers are there. But even for Guru Gobind Singh, when he is asking for volunteers to join to practice this new paradigm, one person is from Lahore, which is Punjab. Another one from central India, Dwarka, east, west, relatively south, we can call it Bidar. Look at their backgrounds. And look at there are incredible discourses if you're interested, but essentially they're saying this is how you become a sovereign. All I'm trying to say here is, today the journey might take us, now I take a flight from Newark Airport to Delhi, which gets there in 13 hours non-stop. I can tell you, the journey from Bidar to Anandpur is not 13 hours in those days. So a few things to think about here. There's an open invitation being sent. All sorts of people are showing up. Somebody traveled a month, 2 months, 3 months. And look at their backgrounds. They are not what we would today call a higher social strata, that who could afford to do those journeys. Some maybe came to check it out. You might hear, hey, this lecture is happening, or this guy is coming, this concert. Some will say, oh, forget it. Some will say, let's go check it out. Maybe some were Sikhs, some were not Sikhs. Can you imagine a barber showing up? And I purposely say this every time I talk about this. What kind of creative excitement existed through Guru Gobind Singh on the Vaisakhi of 1699 that somebody who's a barber first thinks that he should also go, and then has enough courage to get up and become one of the Panjabi's. That is Vaisakhi of 1699. The individuals who are involved, their backgrounds are very, very different. One Panjabi guy. In fact, very interesting thing, it's not on the map, but if I were to put a dot here, Guru Gobind Singh went from here to here, from Bihar to Anandpur. He was also not born in Punjab. So Vaisakhi really is about totally disrupting the way world thinks. Sikhs, Khalsa, our culture is about creative disruption. And that's the declaration there. And before the declaration, most of the community now says we have Panj Pyaras, right? I like Puran Singh's vocabulary. He says they're not just beloved, they're enthroned. This is democracy's representation coming in. So Guru Gobind Singh says, no, they're not just Panj Pyare, which is the most popular phrase today. He actually says, Khalsa Mera Satgur Pura, that I submit to them and they are the two representatives now. Because they chose to volunteer for this stuff. And this is utter act of volunteerism. And in this, he says that whatever the divine sovereignty Guru Gobind Singh had, he transferred it to the Khalsa, the collective. Now think about that. Maybe this is the reason, and I'm going to shift gears here very quickly, the Khalsa from that day onwards really succeeded in delivering its mission. I'm going to get into what the mission is, but in the last 200 years, why it's being undermined, because the mission is very, very clear. They actually have the authority to go do something. But what are those things? So this is the declaration that day. Guru Gobind Singh introduced the Nash doctrine. Nash literally means annihilation, getting rid of, uprooted. He says you're not going to entertain whatever your idea of religion is anymore. Dharam Nash. Because religion was literally enslaving people. So we all have to rethink when we start presenting SikhRI as quote-unquote religion. He uses this word, Dharam Nash. He says, Guru Nanak says the same thing. He says, Karam Dharam Pakhand Jodi Se. Dharam has become Pakhand, hypocrisy. He says, get rid of this idea of Dharam. Why? Because the Indian confines, Dharam was used to create caste system. The technical name of caste system in Indic vocabulary is Varan Ashram Dharam. Dharam is religion. He says it is your religion to essentially maintain and sustain legal apartheid. That's what caste system is. It's a legal apartheid in today's vocabulary. He says get rid of your idea of religion. We're going to have a new system. Get rid of your idea of karma, the whole karmic philosophy. I know this is going to sound strange to some of you because we are laden with this stuff in our minds. But he literally declared that. He said if somebody tells you you're not capable of it, or you don't have a spiritual capacity, or somehow this is not your destiny, he's like, don't entertain this. Because that's what India was being told. Your destiny is doomed. None of the gurus entertained this. They're like, we're going to fight this idea. And they did. Khalsa will not entertain this. Janam Nash, where you're born, which family you're born, has nothing to do with it. It has to do with what do you want to do. And then this whole idea of Sharam Nas, certain jobs or certain things, even today if you go to India, there's embarrassment created that you're not allowed to do certain things. He's like, get rid of all these social embarrassments. Essentially, he's saying hell with all this stuff. And Param Nash's doubts, he's like, if you're still entertaining doubts, you will never become a sovereign entity. So these 5 things, they're recorded by Yani Gyan Singh in Twarikh Guru Khalsa. Twarikh is history of the Guru Khalsa. He records that this was the doctrine released that day. If there's nothing else you get out of today, I want you to at least get this out in your minds. That this was the declaration that day. Without this declaration, we will not be able to understand what Khalsa is supposed to be doing. This is why, if somebody believes they're part of the Khalsa and entertaining this is the doubt. This is the fear even today's Hukum was talking about, because we have not clarified what Khalsa is supposed to be. And then Khalsa was trained. There are 5 forts which were established in Anandpur Sahib, and all sorts of training was given. Remember the first Shabad on Vaisakhi? It's all about mental training. Well, mental training requires work. It requires you to make it your priority in life, which means your time and money needs to be invested in it. And this picture, if you're not aware, is one of the forts called Kila Anandgarh. Guru Gobind Singh built it. It survived the Mughal invaders, it survived the British, it survived everything. But in 1960s, they destroyed this fort, and now if you go to Anandpur Sahib, I was just there 2 weeks ago, in last 10 years they have replaced it with a red-looking, cheap-looking building. This stood there. Can you imagine if you went there? It's like going to, some fort, even if you go to Fort Sumner, if you're in Charleston, for example, you can understand the kind of battles which took place only 150 years ago. This is what Guru Gobind Singh built, and it was standing. So this, you can say, was sort of Khalsa's place for training. If your training center is destroyed, your doctrine nobody knows, your declaration people can't even find, obviously there's going to be confusion. And that's the sort of stuff we are going through. So who really is the Khalsa? I'm going to now only use one source, and I want you to pay a little bit of attention to the name. Sri Gursoba is the name of a text. Author's name is Senapat. He is one of the court poets of Guru Gobind Singh. So this is a contemporary of Guru Gobind Singh telling who's the Khalsa. This is very important, guys, because everyone is spinning now Khalsa to be something else. He very clearly says, Guru has declared the whole Sangha to be the Khalsa. This is a very political statement, by the way. And now I'm going to get into interpretation of it for a couple of minutes, but Guru Sahib said, after I've considered everything, after I've looked at who has volunteered, I've looked at the systems of the world, why did he declare this? Let's talk about this. Because he said, and you're familiar with this, it's a long quote, but essentially he's saying people who live in constant awareness, people who are full of love, people who do not memorialize individuals, people who are away from the ritualism, they who are completely absorbed in awareness, they are the ones to be Khalsa. But this criteria, we will fail most people who think they are Khalsa. Right? So our overemphasis on external identity is killing us. People who had this training when they had an identity, it's like somebody saying I'm an ambassador of a particular country without having the authority or the knowledge or the transfer of the divine sovereignty or the state sovereignty. I mean, people will laugh at them. They're like, something is wrong with this guy, man, he's a loony. So we have to go back and look at the declaration. This is what Guru Gobind Singh is saying. And why? I'm back to Sanapat. Because people who were agents on behalf of the Guru, they were called Masants, people who were given the authority, right? The representatives are your Masants today in political system. Gurdwaras, so Masants were the representatives. The word comes from Arabic, it's called Masnad. Masnad-e-Ali is an old phrase. Masnad-e-Ali were the agents on behalf of one of the caliphs called Ali, one of the 4 caliphs in Islamic systems. And that word was adopted as a Masand. Gurus created these, but by the time Guru Gobind Singh came, because the qualification had totally died, they only had external authorities. Guru actually declared them unlawful. I have that Hukumnama. I got a copy of the Hukumnama from a direct descendant of Vaidaya Singh, Dr. Madanjit Kaur. He literally issued a Hukumnama saying, from this day onwards, he did it 15 days before 1699 Vaisakhi. It is dated March 15, 1699. And technically speaking, the Vaisakhi of that year is either 29th March or 30th March. So roughly 15 days before the declaration of Vaisakhi, he actually outlawed the Masans, those who claimed to be representatives of the Guru. Because the grand plan was people will be their own representatives. So he says it very clearly. Skar Masand Sabdur. He's like those who just claim that they are the representatives, like self-appointed defenders we've come today. He's like, hell with them. I declare them unlawful. 200 years later, 300 years later, look where we are. We have a lot of self-appointed Masans again. It's waiting on you, for you to become the representative of the people. He said it again. He says people who live in the culture of Naam, those who are bringing these qualities, they are the Khalsa, forget the Masans. So it's very, very clearly, it's a very governance model. There's a political dictum behind it. And then he explains, and this is by Nandala. I'm only using contemporary texts here. I'm not telling you what 15 years ago somebody from UBC what they wrote or what somebody wrote 100 years ago. I'm only sharing what they wrote in the presence of the Guru. And their PhDs done on it, that these guys were in the presence of the Guru, which means this is authenticated stuff. And we are not used to looking at authentic stuff. This is Pai Nandala. He's a court poet of Guru Gobind Singh. He has written like 15 different books, including in Punjabi, Persian, and Arabic. And he describes Khalsa. Who is a Khalsa? I mean, you can read it there, but essentially it comes down to Khalsa is an active agent. Khalsa works on self-development, and essentially the job is to get rid of all tyranny. Because that's what India was facing. India was facing the ISIS. Today's al-Baghdadi, the ISIS leader, did one public lecture, and that's how I'm going to make this relevant. In that one public lecture, he invoked two words. He says, I am implementing a takfiri doctrine. Takfiri doctrine says we have a religious right to convert, and those who are not willing to convert, we will kill them. And second thing he says is, if that is not possible, we will use jizya, which in India is called jazia, which is a tax to practice other people's religion. You look at Sikh history from 1699 all the way, I will say even current history, but definitely all of 18th century, Sikhs refused to do both. The only people who responded to the ISIS of 18th century was the Khalsa of Guru Gobind Singh. They said, we will fight you, and we will refuse to pay jizya. This is why they killed Baba Deep Singh. He refused to pay this tax. He's like, you have no right to tax me because I want to exercise my right to assemble freely. I want to exercise the way to live like a free man. That's what he died for. We have to really look at those Sakhis, what happened. They had put up amount that you have to give this much money or we will come kill you. He's like, we're not going to pay it. It's okay if we die. Because this is like giving unfair taxes. Khalsa is that. And Senapat very clearly says there should be no doubt Khalsa was inaugurated to do what? To get rid of human suffering. This is the second biggest slide I have to show with you very explicitly. If there is any doubt in anyone's mind what is the purpose of Khalsa, this is contemporary source very explicitly telling the purpose of Khalsa is not, I say it in today's parlance, so you can get up at 3:30 or so you can go to Bangla practice. All that was already happening. That's part of the folk culture. Khalsa was to make sure you continue to have those rights, because the invading forces were not allowing it. The religious and the political authority wasn't allowing it. So Khalsa's job became eradicate, today we will call basically, all these movements you hear about, fighting for environment, fighting this 99% idea, all sorts of different religious and political issues going on in the world. And then the collection of all the Khalsa was called the Panth. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if you're interested, there are current sources, old sources. The word Panth is getting diluted as well. Sikh nation is 30 million people. That's called Qaum. That's 30 million worldwide today. Anyone, everyone who believes he or she is a Sikh. Doesn't matter their level of observation. Doesn't matter what they do in their life. If they say they are a Sikh, I belong to this heritage, they are a Sikh. Panth was who have given and gone through this idea of Vaisakhi of 1699, have given a public declaration to continue this mission. That's a Panth. I don't know what that number is. We have no empirical data. Historically speaking, it has always been somewhere between 1 to 5% of the people. Today, if we are only going after Khandegi power, without knowing the doctrine, right? You're initiating for what? Initiating to do this. Panth was a collective, and it's very explicitly mentioned, we just don't talk about it anymore. Collective who would fight to essentially, coming back to Guru Granth Sahib, Khalsa is the one who says we have no permanent alliance. This is in Guru Granth Sahib. No permanent alliance. We exist on issue-based politics. What is the best for particular? In Canada, put it bluntly today, it'll be, yes, we can have NDP and you can have liberals and conservatives. Really the question comes down to who is the best representative in your given scenarios. That's why you will see Khalsa working with Mughals against the Mughals, working with hill chiefs against the hill chiefs, working with British against the British, working with Indians against the Indians. It comes down to the issue-based politics, which is a tough thing. The world is not talking about it, but our history is full of that. This is why we have never had a permanent alliance. Because permanent alliance means you will give in to some things which are unprincipled. And this is what Guru Granth Sahib talks about. Okay. So what does Khalsa look for? I'm just showing you in the toughest time in Sikh history, ideas of the Khalsa did not come from any worldly authority other than Guru Granth Sahib. So Guru Granth, which is the textual source of Sikhi, the primary textual source, it remains only a Granth if you just study it. It becomes Guru Granth for the Khalsa, that we only derive our ideas from here. So we study the world, we know the world's paradigms, we know what the world's issues are, but just like in Canada you will derive it from its charter, in America from its constitution, for Khalsas our ideologies, our policies are derived out of Guru Granth Sahib, and it says it very clearly, if there is no Panth, there will be no Granth. And that's sort of what has happened. Now we know more about what other writers or paradigms of the world say. We have very little understanding of the Granth. Because the Panth actually is completely undermined in the last 200 years. Since 1805 to be more exact. So think about this, that Khalsa's constitution is Guru Granth Sahib. It actually considers, that's why Khalsa carries it on his head. Other people do it too. But Khalsa has no option but to not interpret it and not to deliberate on it. That's where our politics comes out of, our social, economic, political, other policies. And the tool used to interpret that was Sarbat Khalsa. I'm not going to go into it today, but all I'll show is every guru prepared for it from Guru Nanak onwards. 18th century has several Sarbat Khalsas. All I want to say is, as a community, we deliberated on economic and political issues, not on religious issues. Today, this is a challenge. Now we get together and we want to talk about all the religious issues. Religion, remember, as religion doesn't even exist for us. It's a very personal phenomenon. The community phenomenon for us was, and we used to meet on Vaisakhi to take care of issues. It happened in 80s too, it has been banned in 80s. Not the topic, but I'm saying it has been experimented with 30 years ago as well. So what is Khalsa's role today in the next 5 minutes? How do we address today's challenge? Basically, Khalsa existed to counter whatever hegemonic or imperial forces existed. Simply put, that's the role of the Khalsa. Those who publicly declared this is what we do. This was a full-time revolutionary. So what's Khalsa's response to today's Punjab is the question. This is what the top five issues in Punjab are. What is Khalsa's response to the global threats? That's the discussion. Discussion is not which text to read at what time. Go figure that out in your own denomination. Right? This is what trainings are. There are different universities, they train you differently. But once you are in the world, if you're an economist, you're trying to figure out what's the best economic model to adopt. Do you follow Amrita Sen? Are you still Keynesian? That's the discussion. Discussion is not where you went to school. Today we keep talking about which school to go to. I mean, this is just so foreign. Go to whichever school works for you. That's about training. And there is no perfect training, but there are some great training that depends on your capability, your accessibility, all sorts of different things. So let's go to whatever training you need to, but these are the issues waiting on response. This is what Khalsa responded to. Today, because the Panth is undermined, Granth is not being studied, the responses to this are not as great. Sikh challenges everywhere in the world, our responses are waiting. Global issues, which is where really our response needs to be. And I'm going to just use, because I talked about this earlier, this whole ISIS response. We died en masse responding to them. I'm going to use that because it's on the news every day. 30 million Sikhs, even if 1%, what is that, 300,000? 300,000 Sikh Khalsa, if really truly existed, would know how to kick ass of ISIS. That's what this means. We did that in 18th century. That's our pride history. We repeat that in our Nas. We refuse to pay unfair taxes, and we refuse to accept the quote-unquote the Takfiri doctrine. So all I'm saying is, by taking Amrit, you don't become Khalsa, although Amrit, Khande ki Pahol is its initiation ceremony. There's a training behind it, there is a mindfulness behind it, there's a celebration of Vaisakhi behind it, and essentially, if you ask me, if I integrate all the meanings of the Khalsa historically, textually, from Vaisakhi, Khalsa means sovereign. Somebody who wants to live as a free individual, free man or a free woman. Even when Bhai Singh, he writes a historical novel, 18th century historical fiction, even a woman, a Sikh woman, when he fought with ISIS of the time, he calls her Sundari, and he describes a world hadn't seen a free woman like her. Today, we're still discussing what should we allow our women to do. What an absurd discussion we are having. We don't get into what we should allow. We actually say we can allow everything and anything. That's our history. That's what Khalsa did. And we practiced it even in the toughest time in the 18th century. That's where Sundari was born. So Khalsa really is about your personal connection with the divine, the Ik, being very, very aware individuals, fighting every single stereotype which exists, and you are mandated, Khalsa is mandated to eradicate human suffering. You can do it by singing that kind of music. There is a music of resistance. That's what Tadi Barabar. That's what Guru Nanak's Babarwani is. It's a resistance. You know, now there are film festivals which are called films of resistance. if you ask me, Guru Nanak is really about that. He's creating, how do you create a culture where somebody is so inspired to connect to the divine, as a byproduct of that, they are becoming defiant individuals. That's the Khalsa. Rawab and Khanda go hand in hand. I'm going to skip this and go to the last slide. This is what happened in Anandpur. I was at Anandpur Sahib 10 days ago, took my kids there to show them what's going on. I didn't know what to show them. My son, 80-year-old, says, Kesgarh Sahib looks like any other Gurdwara. This used to be, you had to go there, you had to work to get there. Like, it's not easy to get to the blessed fort of Ankat here. That's the literal meaning, Kesgarh. And Anandpur is not a city, it's not a city of joy. You know what Guru Gobind Singh had to do to make it a city of joy? First, he had to fight every single religious leader of the time who said they were better Sikhs. Guess what's happening today? That's what had happened at Darbar Sahib. In his time, he had to fight with every damn Masanta of the time, the religious authority of the time. Then he's fighting 22 political authorities, 22 kings who reported to the Emperor Aurangzeb. It's a serious training going on at Anandpur Sahib. And what happened at Anandpur is, it's a poetic action. And essentially, this is where I leave it, Puran Singh says, we know Khalsa in extraordinary times. The reason that Khalsa in extraordinary times shine is because even in their ordinary life, they were excellent. That's your and my challenge. Khalsa in ordinary life today is not a loving spouse, not a kind parent, not a noble friend, a selfless saint, and a brave soldier. That's the work. The role is, in your ordinary life, you get trained, mentally and physically, right? How do you interact? Otherwise, you're in your own silos. When you become excellent, nirmal, sovereign in ordinary life, when you are in extraordinary circumstance, you'll know exactly what to do. If you're just waiting for extraordinary circumstance, then we have this wishful thinking, Messiah mentality, that somebody will come and take care of it. So Khalsa in ordinary life is what was announced with the drum, with the toll. Toll Panjabi and there is a reason why Punjabis use toll for Bhangra. Poor Indian, they can't dance to that bass. I mean, you need certain thing to handle particular bass. I mean, I'm a Public Enemy fan, so they used to have a song, you know, how low can you go, you know, death row, what a brother come. But anyway, the point is, it requires there are people who can't handle particular level of drum. Is not something, we call it drum, but it's a nagada. And nagada gets adopted for Khalsa as well. So again, the celebration gets taken to another purpose. Well, now the purpose is that not only are we going to dance to it, we're going to actually change the whole tune as to what should be danced to. And that's the political, economical, and social theories. Hopefully this gave you a few ideas about Vaisakhi's original intent, how it's located in Guru Granth Sahib, and how Granth Panth idea, the Khalsa's constitutions, Khalsa's declaration, how you and I actually need to seriously study it. So in our ordinary lives, we take these trainings. So we are able to answer the extraordinary calls of 2015. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that inspiring talk, and as I mentioned to you earlier, now you can see why it's worthwhile to change a flight to come and hear Harinder speak. So we'd like to open up the floor now to questions, take any questions from the audience. Here's your chance.
Yes.
Amrit, as we perceive today, is like having Khandevate the goal, reciting 5 Vanis, and reciting those 5 Vanis each and every day, again and again. How do we grow from there? How do we grow from there? I think it's kind of limiting us.
How go from there to where?
Like we are limited to 5 Vanis. Most of the people wouldn't have even gone to reading Guru Granth Sahib, or they may not be reading newspaper every day to see what the challenges in the present society are. So they are kind of mostly limited to themselves and doing that thing again.
No, I understand that, but you're saying going from there to where?
To the real Khalsa.
The real Khalsa. So thank you for asking that. So the question is, we are too bogged down into the protocols. I like to use that word because that's where our fights are. Well, it's simple. You know, the protocols change all the time. If you want to join army, are you going to decide how they should train you? If you want to become SAE member for Society of Automotive Engineers, do you get to decide what the protocols will be? Anywhere in the world, anything you want to join, when you join, you decide yourself, but then you do whatever the system is. That's part of the training. So I think this is part of the things we have to understand. Firstly, Khalsa is a choice, and not everyone in the COM is going to join the Panth. But those who are going to, you go through the routine. If you're on a track team, your coach is going to make you run, and so initially you'll be like, why do I need to run for 1 hour and do my warm-up? Well, because that's why somebody is a coach. They have figured out the particular disciplines of life. So it's an individual prerogative how much you are able to do, what you're not able to do, and there are all sorts of players on the team. Not everyone's able to do everything, but as a team you agree that this is what makes a better team. So do whatever is, and protocols change by the way. I don't really get into which one to follow or not to follow. That's why I said you decide where you want the training. The best training will be to follow the best paradigm available, right? But even in the absence of that, because we have undoing of 200 years, at least go get some training. There are different schools of music, there are different schools of, I mean, you pick the dimension of life, there are different schools and everything. So get the training, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Yes, there are, and then you decide which training is best for you and your availability. But eventually life, a function of life is to go do these kind of things. So I'll mention one more thing. You said the real Khalsa, right? And this is part of the problem. Now we have qualifiers in front of Khalsa, Sikh, whatever, Gurmukh, and that's part of the problem. That was the debate Guru ended. He's like, let's not get into that. Just like there is a utopian model presented, not everyone's going to get there, but we at least agree to the idea. Khalsa is a collective whose job is to develop personal relationship with the divine and fight the social injustice. That's the mission. Now, how much can you fulfill? It depends on you. You decide. And don't worry about the ones who are not doing it or ones who are doing it better than you. It's just you decide how much of this function can I fulfill. Okay, hopefully that helps. Anyone else? Hanji, there and then here.
You had mentioned the Nash doctrine?
Nash doctrine.
Yeah, and that's something like Guru Granth Sahib tells me afterwards.
It's from the written source. The first written source we find is in Gyani Gyan Singh's Tariq Guru Khalsa.
So we're talking about training. Can you give us an example of what the training was like? Guru Gobind Singh's training was like? Because you said we've lost a lot of that.
Sure.
And do you have any sources that we could maybe look at?
Yeah.
Give us an example of what it was like to be trained in the Khalsa.
Excellent question. Thank you for asking that. So there have been, we have to look at the cultural milieu again, the time frame of the time. So when we look at from Guru Nanak through Guru Gobind Singh period, I mean not just like their own training. There are two trainings going on with each guru. We will today call them literary training, and there's a physical training. Every guru is going through that. You know there are Sakhiyas where Guru Nanak is learning math. He is learning Sanskrit, Arabic. This is what, today the university education is different. Earlier, there were two educations. We see this exactly same thing happening when I read Ganda Singh's Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, who in 1760s is the leader of the Sikhs. He was given the title Sultan al-Qaum. He describes what is his training. He says under the Nawab Kapoor Singh's mentorship, he has two trainings. He's learning the language of Guru Granth Sahib so he can understand what we are. And physically, he is learning to fight the Mughal invaders. So trainings are always two. Internal development training, which has to do with mentally becoming strong, spiritually becoming strong, and then the external training on whatever you want to do in life. So if you want to be a musician, you need external training. How to play rebec, or taus, or drums, or if you like Def Leppard, maybe one-hand drum, I don't know, right? The point is there's external training. If you want to be a warrior, a soldier, then you have particular training. So there's an internal development training and there's external development training. Today we'll call on particular skill sets, soft skills and hard skills to get your job done. So Guru Har Gobind Singh was assigned Baba Buddha to learn Sanskrit, Bhai Gurdas and Baba Buddha to teach him both martial arts, and today we'll call them liberal arts. Let's not forget that, liberal arts. We have a huge challenge there. We are not learning liberal arts which have to do with, again, humanities we call it, language, sociology, psychology. Every training is that. There's internal and external. So you pick what you want to get trained in and get busy doing it. Haji.
My question is very self-interested. You're going to see why in a moment. If you had to explain to someone who is not Sikh, so a Christian person, for example, who says to you, in a few sentences, tell me about Vaisakhi and its importance to the Sikhs, what would you say?
Sure. You want me to give you your job so you can tell CBC?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Harinder. Exactly.
So, I mean, this is one of the things I shy away from. And here is the reason. I don't like to give constructed answers. Because really, if you heard even in announcements when Kulvi talked about the SikhRI's mission, and I take this very seriously, I really think the answer should come from you. It has to be a personal answer. So I've given you a lot of data, and you can see how to take this data and make it your personal answer. So here are a few pointers. Let's do a cliff notes.
Okay, yes.
And you figure out how to tell the cliff notes in your own vocabulary.
Okay.
So it should be very clear that Vaisakhi is definitely a cultural festivity, but Guru Nanak's paradigm or the Sikh paradigm made it something much bigger on how to create what people today call purpose-driven life. To borrow another book title from different texts. Second thing about Vaisakhi is this is definitely an initiation ceremony into being very, very politically active. And politically active means fighting to establish just economic, social, political systems. So this is not just spiritual, although spirituality is part of it. Third thing is, Khalsa has no option. Those who believe they are part of the Khalsa collective, they don't have option not to fight human suffering. They have to work towards eradicating human suffering. That's what Khalsa was known for. You look in any historical account, you look at even in 1940s, when they talk about Sikhs of the Khalsa, you look at in 1850s when they're talking about who's fighting the British. Shah Muhammad doesn't say the Sikhs fought it or the Panjabis fought it to save the Punjab's kingdom. What does he say? He says, "Aj howe sarkar ta mull paave, jehdi Khalse ne tega mariyan." It's like everyone left because British had taken over. Either they bought them, they sold them out, whatever. He says, but the Khalsa remained. And they remained and they went with Shyam Singh Atariwala and they died fighting the British. So Khalsa today is diluted, the word. It has been hijacked. I ask you to visit Sonafai. So one recommendation. If I can recommend one book, contemporary book, which now is available in English, so I recommend, I realize there are some language restrictions, but Senapat's book called Sri Gursoba, The Splendor of the Guru, that's the title of the book. Written by the contemporary of Guru Singh, is available in English. It's translated by Professor Kulwant Singh. I just saw him. I got a copy 2 weeks ago. Please read it. You will have a first-hand account, all with limitation. There's always losses in translation of what Khalsa was doing in Anandpur, in South Asia, and what Guru Gobind Singh's intention of Khalsa was. And this is a contemporary of the Guru writing. Sure. Haji.
You have mentioned some of the issues facing Punjab, like the economy, drug problem, exercise, and water, and so on. Have not all these problems to do a lot with the leadership we have? And also, where does the Khalsa or the idea of Khalsa leadership fit in? Because today we find that the spiritual aspects are subservient now to the politics of the state, and this find in also our religious institutions. I'd like to have your views about this.
Sure. Thank you for asking that. So, the question is regarding Khalsa vis-a-vis Punjab. So I think there are two presumptions, if you don't mind. I want to take it on. Actually, the politics of the state has made Khalsa or religiosity subservient. This is not new. I just shared with you the state actually bought the religious leaders even in Guru Tegh Bahadur's period. But Khalsa never became subservient, Guru never became subservient. This is what state does. State does it all the time. Khalsa was very clear even 100 years ago when the British government bought our religious leaders. Nankana Sahib leader was bought, Akal Takht Jathedar was bought. But Sikhs responded en masse and they freed their Gurdwaras, they freed India. The challenge has always been, and I think the bigger challenge today is, we confuse the word Khalsa with particular religious leaders. But this is not just today. Every time this challenge has existed, every state, they know you hijack the constitution, you change the constitution. Like most of us don't even know what Guru Granth Sahib says anymore, right? So we are relying on people like me who are spinning everything, which is a big problem. Second thing is, state has always done that. Knowing that, Khalsa has responded. So how can they respond to today's Punjab issues? Let me give you a couple of examples. Khalsa in its mandate, just an example to feed aside, Khalsa in its mandate said, you will not associate it with those who kill their daughters. Guru Gobind Singh only did that with 5. You know how we have so many preferences in the religious lives? And everyone you ask today, we make our preferences to be laws. Guru Gobind Singh didn't make those laws. We are making more laws which are absurd. But he did make this law. He said, you will not associate with daughter killers. Now you tell me, when you have a setup, today's setup, where people who have been installed into our religious and political heads, and their own daughter-in-laws have been killed, they have killed their own daughters for whatever reason, literally killed, got them assassinated. That should tell you the height of nonsense which is operating today. So who's going to answer? It comes back to those who want to get mentally trained and knowing that we have been completely hijacked, fight back. So Punjab is waiting for that. There are no collective, there are individuals. There are individuals giving responses. And that's our history, by the way. Bhota Singh, Garja Singh are individuals. Sham Singh Atariwala is individual. Few people support them. But when you have enough of those incidents, enough of this happened in 1920s, eventually people of Punjab woke up and they threw everyone out. So the word is, get few people busy, pick an issue, whether it's water issue, drugs issues, education, and they all use these things to basically morally bankrupt us, and they're succeeding at it. So I think the challenges are ours. And all I'm saying is this has always happened. And this happens because the Khalsa's image has been changed. And we got to win back that image. Khalsa is jo nirdhan ko pala. That's the line with it. Jo dust ko gala, you know. So you have to have a training on how to get rid of poverty. Right? That's what Sikhs used to do. Then you need a training on how to get rid of what we would call tyrants. But now what has happened, don't mind me bringing this up, but this is today's thing. Now even the biggest gift of Guru Gobind Singh is used to give saropas to the tyrants. Delhi Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, Delhi Sikh Gurdwara Management Committee gave a kirpan and a saropa to Jagdish Titler. And Chief Khalsa Diwan, where quote-unquote Sant Teja Singh stood and gave space to organize Gadar Party 100 years ago, is now giving the similar kirpan to Modi. This is the undoing of the Khalsa. So our symbols, we now actually call them symbols, but they are being presented as memories, memorializing for negative aspects. So all I say is we have some serious work out for us. I mean, everyone has their own politics, but at least from today's presentation, I hope you have some glimpse of Khalsa's politics, which has less to do with who is the head of the state. It has much more to do with what is your role to exist in this world. Hopefully that helps. We have 5 more minutes, so maybe 2 more questions. Haji, yes.
What is the importance of orange and blue color in Khalsa Panth as a blue cause?
Sure. So I have 2 submissions for your consideration here. First thing is, religiously there is no significance. Gurbani, Guru Granth Sahib says, you know, The word rang is literally color, but rang is symbolically used for love. And actually, it says, at the end of the day, the deep crimson is the one we are interested in. That's the symbolism of love, right? Kuda rang kehna na, Suha lal. And when Hola Mahalla is being described by Bhai Nand Lal, contemporary of the Guru, not how we are looking at now, whatever is in Anandpur. And then Bhai Nand Lal says that Guru Gobind Singh celebration of Hola Mahalla, the colors of, we call it, he uses the line in Persian where he says that Zamino Asman, like from the earth to the heavens, which means in physical life, what is visible to us, Sarkharu Rakart, that the colors Guru Gobind Singh is distributing, it's making everything deep crimson. So think about what that means. It really is amazing. It's basically inspiring incredible life. Now, the second response I have is we do get influenced by the hegemonic cultures around us. Sardar Kapoor Singh has written a whole article, if you're interested in about these colors, where they're coming from. Some of the colors are coming from revolutionary ideas, and they're produced out of a particular event in particular era. So, for example, in 80s, Kesari became the defiance color. In 1980s, that is. In 1920s, the defiance color was black. Every Akali wore black when they protested against. Blue was born out of Guru Nanak period, where he himself writes in Vaisakhi because the state at the time, the Mughal Empire, had said only the administrative class can wear blue. Neel Bastra Pehno Hai Praman. He's like, hell with you, we'll also wear blue. So really, we are not married to any color. We believe every color is great. So these days, I know there's some discrimination in some denominations about don't wear green or red or enjoy life, man. Guru Sahib says, rang hassa, rang roga, chup bhi kar ja. The color is, I'm colorblind. So sometimes I purposely wear green, I ask when I have to go to certain areas, right? The point is, it doesn't matter which color, but colors in particular movements are a color of defiance, and we need to understand that in that context. Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, thank you to actually I'm told this is a 100-year-old courthouse, so I'm delighted to be here and talking about Khalsa, which is 300-plus-year-old revolutionary idea, which it's, by the way, the heritage of the Khalsa is spread worldwide now. The challenge now is how do you revive the culture of the Khalsa through the culture of now. So thanks to PAMA here, the gallery, and the organizers through Gurratan on the Sikh Heritage Month, and all the volunteers and all of you for making this Saturday, hopefully a learning morning. Thank you.
Have a small token of our appreciation, small little gift bag from your community we have. So thank you so much. It's amazing to have you here today. Hopefully we'll have you next SikhRI Month and many more SikhRI Months to come.